So I've been asked to show how to stop a player from leaving somewhere before they've done a certain action. As you know, let's take into account the original Kanto games. Once you start to select your Pokemon for your starter Pokemon, you can't leave until that decision's done. Then you have a battle with a rival. We're going to mimic the first part of that. So as you can see here, I've done a quick little rehash of the map. So we've got our own fresh map here. And we've got the 3 starter Pokemon we did on the previous video. And we have here our Birch object. Currently there's no code on that. We'll do a quick update on that. And we want you to be able to come in, and before you leave, when you leave, you're going to have to make sure you have taken a Pokemon. So what we need to do is use these items called triggers. So a trigger tile is basically an interaction with the player if a certain variable is set. So they're not going to be on screen, they're sort of invisible. But once the player has certain sort of requirements, the code behind them will set up on stepping when they're stepped on. We can see this on the right. So the script is what script we're going to be calling. The var, or the variable, is the name of the variable we're comparing, and that value. A variable is used inside the game to sort of in the memory to check a value or keep score of a certain value. It could be a string, that being the name of a Pokemon, the name of a move. It could be a true or false value. Basically, it's something that's changed. It varies. It's a variable. Most commonly, you'll find it used for states, the state of the game. And you normally use numerical values for that. So we're going to go into it, and we're going to create a new variable. And I've got one here called var starter selection state. And I've just thrown it on the bottom here. You don't have to use the same memory value, but this is just the one we're using. Once you've got that, we can then go into our script, into our map, and we're going to set it there. So we're going to use that value, and we're going to have a value as 1. The reason I'm using 1 is because the game starts as 0. So when you first start the game, your starter selection is 0. You haven't done anything. You're going to walk into here. You're going to speak to Professor. Once you've spoken to Professor, he's going to allow you to take a starter Pokemon. That variable will change to 1. And then you're going to be unable to leave until you've got a Pokemon. And then once you've taken your Pokemon, we're going to raise that once more to 2. And you're going to be able to freely leave. So we're going to do that now. In our code, we can find it. So we're going to make that quick script for the Professor. So we're going to call it Professor's Lab. Professor, we'll just say Professor, and as always, we're going to lock the player and release the player so they can't interact with it. When you're speaking with an object, you want them to face you because it's polite. You're just going to write the line face player. That will automatically turn them to the direction of the player. Now, we want to check if the player's actually started making a selection yet. So we're going to do if var, our var is equal to 0. So this is the start. Sorry, we have to do double equals, which is comparing one value to this value. So if this one equals 0, which it will at the start of the game, then we want to do something to allow the player to start doing their selection. So we're going to say something simple like, please take a Pokemon. Now to make sure he doesn't say this every time, we're now going to set the variable again. So we're going to pass in the name of our variable and the new value, which is going to be 1. Brilliant. So now with that, if we attempt to leave, it's going to be picked up by this trigger, and the script's going to run. We have no script there at the moment, so it won't actually do anything. The next part we want to do is while the player is making their selection, we're going to do what is that state? That is 1. Say, we could say something like I caught them all myself. They are very rare. Obviously, you can put whatever you want here to fit in your theme. The one thing I want to point out here is I'm going from 1 to 0, and the order is kind of important. If I did it the other way, you're going to run into scripts running which you don't want to run. That is because if we're setting the variable, and then we have this underneath, we're going to run this part of the script, and then run this part of the script. if we had something more advanced, like giving a Pokemon, so let's say we were giving a Pokemon here, and then we set a variable because we don't want to give it to them twice, it would then instantly run this next piece. And it can often run into some issues you don't want to happen. So always make sure you're doing it, always do it descending order. That way you haven't got any overlap. And that's because of this line here. This way, when this kills, it's going to check that it's not equal 0 and it's going to skip that piece of code. Hopefully that's explained it. But you'll notice some things as you sort of play about. And then, of course, we're going to do if it equals to more than 1. We're just going to say, good luck on your adventure. And that is now enough, so we can go into our professor, tie that onto them, and we're all golden. Okay, now for the trigger script. We're going to, again, create a new one, call it Professor Lab. Trigger, player attempts to leave. When you attempt to leave, we're going to have the professor turn around, call you back, and say, hold on, you need to take a Pokemon. So, lock the player, stop them from doing anything, and release the player. At this point, we're going to do what's called a movement script. Movement scripts will apply to a specific object on the screen. So if we see in the top, we have an object ID. So we pass that object ID in, and a movement script, it will do actions on that. It can move it around, it can make it jump, it can run in place. All depends on what you want to do. So for this one, we're just going to keep it simple and say message box, hey, wait. And then we're going to have the player, because the player is also a sprite on the screen. We're going to do apply movement, event ID player. I believe that's what we call it. Yep, so this is the player's reference. And we're going to pass it a movement. We're just going to do player, or we're going to do professor's lab, player, surprised. I always put the name of the location of it because then you can have different ones. We're going to create a new movement script, call it movement, pass in that name, and we're just going to emote exclamation mark. You can see there's a few different ones we have there. And we need that movement. We want to delay anything from happening until we've had that movement happen. I'm going to say wait movement, if I can spell correctly, wait movement, event player. So it's going to wait for all movement running on this sprite before we continue. You can have multiple running at the same time. So if you want someone following, you run 2 of these and you're waiting for one of them to finish. They'll be running at the same time. Brilliant. We then want to have the player turn around. So actually, we're going to have an exclamation point and we're going to have the player face up. So we're going to add face up to our script. Now our player will turn around. We're going to have the professor say something again. It's like, you will need a Pokemon to continue your journey. Obviously, write your own text based on what you're trying to do. And we want to move the player off of that space. So once again, I'm going to do apply movement, event ID player. I'm going to create a new one called movement professor's lab step up. Copy that, create a new movement script, and we just have walk up. You can see when I start to type, there's loads of different ones. You've got walk for different directions. You can do diagonal. Fast will make you quick. There's a fastest one, which is used for the there's a walk fast is you're running. Fast though is used for the boat normally by Mr. Briney, which makes you really, really quick. Yeah, we'll do walk up, takes you off of that step. So now when the player comes down, they'll turn around and walk up. Very simple. So we're going to add this script to all of our triggers. If you're doing, sometimes you might want to vary them slightly because they won't have different walking on them, but we're just going to, again, for the tutorials, I want to keep them short and concise. Then we need to make sure we add the variable. So we take that variable we made, put it in there, and the var value is 1. Var value is 1 to make sure we can come in while that happens. 1, 2, 3, 4. Golden. Save all of that, and then we need to make one more change to our script. So we have our selections here. So now we need to do, when we're taking our choice, we need to actually make it so we can leave. So we're going to set a var to 2. Because they've made their choice, the variable we set to 2, and they're going to be able to escape. It's a nice simple thing, and it's very powerful. You can manipulate it however you want. So I'm going to map this compile. You can play it along at home, and we'll see if it works in 2 minutes. And it didn't work because we missed a line here, which was wait movement obj event ID player. So this was actually not triggering that stepping up. So we'll go compile once again and see the fixed version running. Okay, so we fixed that bug. So now when we speak to him, when we try to leave, that trigger point will react. It will say you need Pokemon. It will kick us up. So we're now unable to leave. Once we pick our Pokemon, so we're going to take Squirtle, and then we head down, we'll be able to freely leave because that new variable is updated. Like as always, I'm going to put this script into a post bin in the description, and using triggers, you'll be able to play around with it yourself and see how good you can make it work. And if you want more, leave a comment and I'll try to do guides that you guys want to see, and I'll see you next time.